Hey guys, we just wanted to let you know that BetOnline is the presenting sponsor of the Dumb Dad podcast. It is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing.
That's right. Every single stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. During the games.
During the games. And you know what wasn't on this list? Basketball. You know why?
That's right.
The Celtics won.
That's right, because the Celtics won. There you go, Kev. You got
Sorry,
him in there.
did
You
I
got him
sneak
in
that
there.
in there? Did I sneak that in? Oh, my gosh. That was an accident. I can't believe I just said that. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games.
That's right. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit.
Bet Online. The game starts here. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the Dumb Dad Podcast. My name is Kevin, and I'm a dumb dad.
And my name is Evan, and I am also a dumb dad.
I don't know if you guys can notice. Things are different right now.
Yeah, that's right. We are not together.
Relax.
In spirit.
We're
Not physically, but in spirit. We are
We're
together.
not breaking up. This isn't some mutual separation. Evan's just out of town visiting family right now. And that's quite all right. Before we get started and talk about our guest today, we want to remind you guys that we are going on tour. If you don't know already, we are going to Chicago, St. Louis, and Nashville. Chicago on August 5th, St. Louis on August 6th, and Nashville on August 7th.
You might as well
Very
just go get yourself the tickets, because you're going to hear about it a lot. Just come see us live. It's going to be such a fun show. We are working hard on putting it all together for you, the viewer, listener, fan, follower, whatever you want to call it, dumb parent. You know, it's all going to be part of the show. We're all going to acknowledge the fact that parenting is insane and hard, and we're going to laugh about all the mistakes together.
It is an amalgamation of what this podcast is and what our videos are. So we are going to do some stuff that you are familiar with. It is all original material, but we're going to talk about real life events. We're going to cover it all. It promises to be a fun show. There will be a Q&A. Okay, a little teaser. You guys can come and ask us the real questions you've been wanting to ask.
The hard-hitting facts that you need
Not
to know
are you
about.
really dads? The answer is yes, we're really dads.
Yeah, we're really dads, yes.
But come on out to the show. There's a link for it in our show notes. There's links to it in all of our social media bio. Or you can just Google the Dumb Dads Live in Chicago, St. Louis, or Nashville.
Yeah, through City Winery. Yeah, through City Winery. It's going to be an awesome show. Can't wait to see you guys there.
We have a guest today.
We have a guest. Man, I am so excited to talk with this gentleman. His name's Gary Vider, who is sharing his story from when he was a kid. His dad was a con man. And got him into. They posed as all his dad's idea. They posed as like Sports Illustrated for kids employees, as like a young journalist, and he tells all this his story of what it was like to be a kid when his son or his father is a con man, and who is now a dad himself. And so the lessons that he learned as a little kid that he will take or not take with him as he becomes a father and starts talking to the world and how it works with his children. Yeah,
it was really great talking with him. Gary is a really great, funny guy. He's a stand-up comedian, so it was really easy to talk to. And it was we knew right away it was going to be an easy conversation because he was talking to us from his finished basement where his child plays. So.
Yeah.
There's toys in the background. We were like, all right, we got a dumb dad here. This will be good.
He was so easy to talk to. We probably could have talked to him for 3 hours. I mean, he couldn't have done that. His kids take naps and stuff like that. He had to get out of there. So
nice.
It was a great conversation.
He wasted his nap on us.
Yeah.
But here it is. Enjoy our conversation with Gary Vider. All right, guys, so our guest today is a New York-based comedian who has had appearances on Conan and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, has recently released his stand-up special, It Could Be Worse, and is here to talk about his new podcast, number one dad. Everybody, please welcome Gary Vider.
Hey.
Hello,
How's
Gary.
it going?
What's up,
Gary?
Welcome to the Dumb Dad Podcast. How are you feeling today? Are you feeling dumb?
Yeah, I have. So where I do my where my office is. I mean, my house isn't very big, but it's in the basement, and then that's of course like where like the kids play and everything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we split the time between me doing work and them playing. I have two kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. So
Got
so
it.
I'm like in the I'm like right in it.
In the thick
It's a
of it.
4-and-1. Okay.
Yeah, and like yeah, so I'll do my work down here in this like basement, and like I'll be writing dick jokes, and then they'll be coming down here, and then they'll be playing. So it's kind of a weird, combination of stuff.
It's great. You
But-
bounce ideas off of them.
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
writer. It's the
No,
writer's
no.
room. You
Yeah,
know.
I'm like, is this good? Like, what do you think about this one? So, but yeah, they, it's fun, and it's, I'll hear like footsteps running upstairs and stuff, and then you're
Mhm.
still trying to get all your stuff done. But yeah, there's part of you that like once, you want to be up there, but you're also like, oh, I also have to like try and make a living. And it's definitely a hard balance,
Yeah, yeah.
Do you guys do this from home? Like, are you at your place, or is like you have an office, right?
Yeah, we do this from home. It's funny because you mentioned in your stand-up special, "It Could Be Worse," which is great, by the way.
Thank you very
especially
much.
the title. It's a great runner that you have for the whole thing. It's
Yeah.
good. It's funny you talked about you had your kids during COVID.
Yeah.
Your first one at least.
First,
in the, hi- in
I
the
had
height
the
of
first
it.
one. Yep. Yeah, and it was
And-
a lot.
Yeah, it's been wild. We started doing this during the pandemic as well. We had this podcast before then, but we started making videos and stuff, and just had to learn to work around the kids. And this is like bringing us back to the COVID times where the kids are out of school. They just have to work around the silence. You
Yeah.
can't really yell at them to be like quiet because you're quote working. It's like I'm wearing a bathrobe pretending it's 4 a.m. like
Totally. I mean, like I'll go upstairs, be like, all right, it'll be like a work from like 9:30 to 10:30. I'm like, all right. Then I go up at 10:30. I'm like, I'm ready for like lunch, but then I just like wait around for like 2 hours till like I'm really ready to eat. So you're just like killing time when you should be working. It's just so hard to just find that exact balance. But yeah, that I had my son during well, my wife had him. I did absolutely nothing. So my wife, she she was like taking care of him while I was like trying to work and everything. But it's like, yeah, figuring it out is just almost impossible because like you do like I said, want to be there, but you have to work.
you have
It's
to
so
work.
hard.
I find
Yeah.
that balance so funny sometimes, like when it's like, okay, now is the time that I've set aside to write something or go film something. But then sometimes it's like I'm staring at, just like staring at a blank sheet of paper basically for like 45 minutes and or whatever. Like sometimes it's like, man,
Yeah.
this isn't coming to me. Or like last night, I'm actually up at visiting my parents right now. Last night, I tossed and turned all night long. I had this idea. And then I was like, I need to wake up and write this down because if I'm gonna forget the idea if I don't wake up and write it down. So sometimes like ideas
Totally.
will strike me when I'm not even. It's like I'm halfway conscious. I'm asleep basically, or then sometimes I sit down and
well,
work. And it's
sometimes you
nothing's
just
coming to me.
need that like 45-minute buffer of like where you're like, I'm gonna start work just to like decompress and like take a breather, and then you're like, all right, now I can like start. Yeah, just because it's we'll get up like my wife, she wakes up a little bit earlier than me, fortunately, so she'll get up at like 6 a.m. with the kids, and then I'll like, even though I'll go to bed like pretty late, I'll wind up getting up probably around like 6:45, 7, and then your day just starts. You're
Yeah.
immediately with the kids, so you're just trying to get a whole grip on it, and like she'll work out, so I'll be with them for the first few hours, and then I'll start work, and it's like you're already like behind, you feel like, because
Always.
you're so tired. They make you so tired. I don't
You do just like sit in the room and just like, all right, this is when I'm supposed to work. But you're like exhausted from all of like the overstimulation you just had with your kids.
I know.
I was going to ask you about that, like, especially with your second, because your first was kind of during the pandemic. You just had to, we just all had to figure that out. But with your second, and I used to bartend, so I can kind of relate to this. Did you have to do a late night at the cellar? Are you going home and helping with night feedings, or were you just like deuces, I'm going to sleep. Like, how did that work?
I would help out as much as possible, but my wife really did. She like stepped it up and was like, she was just all like hands on deck. So
yeah,
I mean, yes, I would help, but I'm like, I also like bathing them and things. Like she's just so much better at that. Or like she'll say that I use that as an excuse.
I was just
but like,
gonna say,
I'm like, you're like the best
roasted.
at this. Yeah, yeah, you're so good at this. Just keep doing all of them.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, no, I would say, yeah, I'm like, you're the best cook. Just keep doing it. And the way you do betting, nobody beats that. So like, no, but she was like really like took charge of that, and and she's a stay-at-home mom, so like, you know, obviously it's not the easiest thing, but I have jokes about it in my act now about just a stay-at-home mom. I say like being a comedian is harder than that, but people don't like that in the beginning, but yeah, it's you know, it is difficult, you know, what she does, and just taking that into consideration and like telling her like, you know, I appreciate it so much really does help go a long way, because we're trying to balance like work and then her being a stay-at-home mom, and of course she needs a break too.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. You joked around in the special. You talk about your kids very, very little at the beginning of your latest special.
Yeah.
And then you joked around about your friends saying, "Oh, you're gonna have so much material," which is a question that we get a lot of, just like, how do you ever run out of material? Which like you don't. But are you trying to figure out how to walk that line? As somebody who's been doing comedy for a while. Now you have kids. How are you treading that line of like talking about your kids, or are you just kind of like, let's go for it?
I mean, right now, especially like in the new stuff that I'm doing, I mean, I talk about them a good amount, and I have like I've always had like a lot of wife stuff in general, so I feel like a balance between the two. But yeah, you know, you have to take in consideration like they're gonna be going to like school eventually, and then right now it doesn't necessarily matter, like their friends don't know what you do, but like you don't want to be saying something that's like they could be made fun of. And I mean, listen, kids can make fun of you for anything, but you're trying to keep it like somewhat respectable, and you know, but also, you know, it's comedy. And I think like my kids, I mean, my 4-year-old, I could tell more, but like he's got a great sense of humor, and like, you know, still obviously they're very delicate, but like, yeah, you got to be careful with what you say. But he has he understands sarcasm to a point where you know, right now it's like totally fine. I feel like at least the line that I'm treading.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely funny. We do get comments, and if you haven't, you will, where they're just like, well, then don't have kids. And it happens so much where you're like, all right, man, I guess we can't joke around about things. I apologize about that.
In my special, I have a joke where I say, like, you know, we're teaching he was 3 at the time, but we're teaching him colors, and we were doing it with M&Ms. So I was like, oh, like I wanted it to be a rewarding way. He gets it right, he gets to eat an M&M, and then I showed him a red one. And he's like, what color is that? He's like, green. I'm like, what? You know, showed him a blue one. I'm like, what color is that? He goes, yellow. And this goes on, and he doesn't get any right. And I tell my wife, I'm like, he didn't get any right. And she goes, oh my God, is he colorblind? I'm like, I hope he is, because if not, we've got ourselves an idiot. And like, so the whole joke is like, you know, that he's stupid, and like I would prefer him to be colorblind than to be, you know, like an actual like idiot. But and you know, in the beginning he didn't get colors, and that's what gave me the idea. But like, you know, he does get colors, so I'm like, hey, this isn't gonna kill him in life, so I'm like, this will be fine, you know. And it's a good joke, so I'm like, hey, I'll sacrifice, I'll sacrifice, you know, like pain that will cause them for the rest of their life to like quality of joke. So there's a certain threshold.
Yeah.
I got to pick your brain on this one, because Evan and I are about to go on tour, and Evan and I met doing live sketch comedy, and since we started doing this again, pandemic, all that stuff, it's all been online. So now we're kind of getting back to our roots. We're going live. How has that been now that you're a dad? You've been on the road quite a bit. You're probably still on the road pretty nonstop.
Yeah.
I mean, the joke is always, right, that the stand-ups they hate the road, right? That you get sick of the hotels. I assume that's true for you as well.
You get sick of it. I mean, certain cities are just so much more enjoyable than others, but you know, you're going to some duds, you know, like everything can't be like, you know, Chicago or like, you know, California or like I live in New York, so where are you guys based at? Where do you live?
We're in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, like you
Yeah.
know, LA is cool. Like, I mean, like there's some places that get you excited to go to, but like, you know, I'm not gonna name them because I'll probably be back twice next year. But but you go to the, you know the ones I'm talking about where you're like, oh my god, I gotta go here,
Yeah.
and
They
then
know
you're
which
leaving
ones
your
you're talking
family.
about.
Yeah, they know. Yeah, they're
know.
self-aware. They've been trying to get out. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. They can't. They're trapped.
The one highway has been under construction for years.
Exactly. But yeah, I can't. They can't. You know, my kids get. I mean, my wife gets it, and like my older son, he's like understanding that I do have to obviously go out and do it. But yeah. So it does. But it doesn't make it easier to travel and like. But you got to do it. I don't mind the road when it's like. But you know, every time isn't like always the best time. You get homesick. I feel like. A lot of times when you go on the road for stand-up, you'll be at a club, and it's usually like 4 days, like out of the weekend, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then sometimes Sunday. But like, I'm at the point where it's like if I could just do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's like ideal. The other that one extra day just takes it makes a huge difference in like how you feel, because then you're getting back on a Monday and maybe your flight's like delayed. It's like and now it's like Monday evening, so now you really miss like 5 days, you know, and then it's just so much extra. So you really take that in consideration.
Has that been made harder with kids, or is it like, phew, sweet vacation?
Definitely not like because it's also like I finally have quiet to like really get work done, so I do try and make the most out of it. Like, you know, I'm there for shows. I'll have, you know, on a Thursday you have one show, on a Friday, Saturday you have two shows. So before you know it, like, you know, you wake up, maybe sleep in a little bit later, and then you're like, you kind of have to do some work and, you know, maybe get some exercise in, and before you know it, it's the show. So it's like you still have like you have more time because you don't have your kids around to get your work done, but before you know it, it's showtime, and you're trying to make the most of that.
You can
That's
get
awesome.
the work done in a row when you're not being bothered for a snack or, you know,
Yeah,
somebody telling on
totally.
somebody or whatever.
When
Or you're
not
just like,
interrupted.
I have so much time, and then you take a nap, and you're like, oh, you almost missed the show.
I ruined it. I ruined it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that. There's definitely that
Yeah.
as well. Let's get into the podcast. Your
Cool, yeah.
podcast, not ours. I'll be honest. When we were told to promote another podcast about dads, we were like, absolutely not.
Yeah,
But
it doesn't make any sense.
But
Yeah,
it's a limited
yeah.
series, so we'll go
Yes,
for it.
That helps. Yeah, that helps. I know that helps in like helping out another podcast. But it's weird because so anyway, my YouTube it's a YouTube special, the stand up special. I don't know if we said that called
Yeah.
It Could Be Worse. But then
Yeah.
the podcast, it's on whatever, you know, wherever you get your podcasts. It's not on. That's not actually can't be found on YouTube, but all audio. It's all audio, and it could be found, you know, on any streaming. Is it streaming platform? Is that what you call it?
Anywhere
Streamer?
you get podcasts, the number
There you
one
go.
dad. It's 10 episodes, right? As of right now, this recording, there's 3 episodes.
3 episodes in.
I've binged them all. It's great.
Thanks.
Genuinely,
appreciate
it's an awesome podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been 24 years since my dad and I last talked, and he was a con man, and he was involved in a whole bunch of different things, and some of those cons he involved me in, and the main one, which kind of is like where the story picks up from, is me reflecting on my childhood of this main con that we did, which is where I impersonated a Sports Illustrated for Kids reporter, and he impersonated a Sports Illustrated for Kids photographer, and we would go to Madison Square Garden as these people under this disguise, and he would call ahead, get us press passes, and we'd go to a whole bunch of games for free. And then I'd go into the locker room and I interview the players, and I met Michael Jordan that way. He was the biggest one that I ever met, but I interviewed him, and then got an autograph card, and we did this for over 4 years and never got caught. And this was just like how my dad operated. Everything he did was a scam. And the podcast basically is me trying to understand more so about like why he made these decisions, and get a better understanding of who he is, and make sure that I remember it correctly, because it happened when I was younger, and I stopped talking to him, like you said, like when I was 15, and I want to make sure I got like the whole story straight, and make sure that I had good reason to cut him off, and also to find out like what he's up to today. And that's where the podcast like is treading towards, is hopefully a meeting with my father and sitting him down and asking him these questions that I've been wanting to ask, and that I've asked people throughout the podcast, like these different scenarios that took place, to get his opinion on it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's
your story, because when you're growing up, you're a little kid. This is your dad, and when you, I mean, like, especially like in the '90s, there's no Internet of Things or anything like that, right? So
Yeah.
your dad is your dad. You may, for the most part, assume this is how all families or other dads operate. I mean, you can only assume
sure.
like this is like what a
I mean,
family
yeah.
is, or
Yeah.
or I'm assuming to a certain
Yeah,
extent
all you
he's
know
like,
is from like TV. Really, you're not like I couldn't Google dad, and then it would be like, this is what dad is supposed to be, or like if now you could get like a million. Yeah, you could have went to library and like I was gonna take like a 15-year-old kid taking out a self-help book on like how to be a father. It would be an interesting dynamic. But yeah, this is like you weren't searching for anything. You kind of what you had is what you had, and my dad was like, oh, I thought. Parents argued all the time, and they'll have blowouts, and I would whatever, be pissed at my dad constantly because that's the thing that you're supposed to be with your dad. That's just the relationship you're supposed to have, and I felt that everybody was somewhat had an idea for screwing somebody over because this is what people do in life. Because that's my dad would teach me. He would teach me like, oh, to get past certain things, you kind of have to cut corners, and that was just the way that he operated. But yeah, you couldn't look that up anywhere. You couldn't find out. As silly as that is, it's it's the truth. We were just not as knowledgeable, and you kind of just took with whatever you were given. You kind of just went with it.
It's wild. I think the podcast is so good, and it's really well crafted. I'm not going to try to give away any spoilers. People should go listen to it. I will say I do like the aspect of you have your therapist on there, and your wife, and I think there's something to be said about that. It's definitely good to have your support system in the podcast because it is very raw. You narrate what happens throughout it, clearly in post, but the real interviews that are happening in real time with certain people, those are happening in real time. And it was good that you had your support system. I really like it. You had your therapist on there for kind of a legitimacy of just like, what am I doing? Is this a good idea? Like just adding that, speak to that.
Yeah, so that my therapist was actually my wife's and my marriage counselor. So we it was somebody I was familiar with. So when I went into the podcast, I wasn't in therapy until the start of the podcast. So I was starting to I reached out to her name's Babita. I reached out to Babita and I asked her if I could see her again and say that, and I told her that I was doing this podcast, and what it is going to be potentially reconciling with my father, and she remembered hearing about it when we were in couples counseling, because obviously it comes up because that's part somehow that just winds up being part of your issues with your wife, is your relationship with your dad. And
imagine that.
So it was nice to have somebody familiar with the situation, and she welcomed it. And as I was going through with the podcast, now we recorded all the episodes, so obviously I know what happens, but the where we're at right now in 3, it's I'm seeing her and I'm talking to her as it's going on, and everything that I have to go to talk to my mom about my dad for the first time, and we haven't talked about him in those 24 years, and bringing up his name is a huge deal, and she guides me through it. And she also kind of asks the questions of why are you doing this? What makes you want to go find your father? What are you afraid to find if you find something, and are you okay with whatever that is? And so she asks these questions, and you're kind of just like regular therapy. I mean, it is. I'm doing the same thing that I'm doing. Yes, I'm being recorded, but it's my real emotion towards the situation, because it's happening as we're going through it.
It's astounding to me that at 15 you decide to basically, separate yourself from your father. That's a pretty mature thing for a 15-year-old who, what I would still think is a kid, to decide to do. I mean, I would probably still struggle to make a big decision like that.
I know, for sure. What I think at 15 is what I felt like I was like a veteran at that point, because I felt like I've been through so much of my father's that it kind of made me like this grizzled veteran where I'm like, I felt wise beyond my years. Like I really did. I felt like I knew how the world works because I was able to see it through him, and that, you know, things aren't what they seem. And now I realize like not only is what my dad was showing me, the world isn't what it seems, and that people, you know, could pull one over on one another, but like my own father isn't what I wanted him to be and what, you know, what I wish he was. So I'm like, it was easy for me to like make this kind of like adult decision or major decision at 15 that I'm like, this is like not my guy.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot with, you know, with parents that aren't pulling their weight. The kids are forced to grow up faster than they honestly should or want to or any of that stuff. So
as a 15-year-old, you know, between the ages of when my dad and I were running this sports scam was between the ages of like 9 to 14, from the years 1992 to 93 season to around like 97. And we're doing this and going through all this stuff. And, you know, I knew, like, obviously, I look back and I'm like, oh, I'm a young kid, but I didn't realize how, as silly as it is, like how young I was until like now people have reached out and they're reaching out because they have kids and they're like, oh my God, this is so brave that you're doing this about your father. And I realize it's because they have kids that are the same age as me that was going through this. And you just realize like, no, it's such a terrible thing for a kid to go through, even though it's cool, the sports stuff, but being around somebody who's lying and this is supposed to be this role model, it's like kind of just takes a good chunk of like the joy of your childhood out of it. And it definitely took me time to process that as I've gotten older, but like, you know, and it stinks, but it is what it is. And it gave me this, you know, cool story so that I'm trying to run with. And but yeah, it is it's sad when it's like you're like, oh, you're so precious at this ripe age of like 9, you know, at 9 years old, and you're so impressionable, and like you want to keep that innocence.
I have sort of a two-part question about that. Do you have any idea like why your dad was like that, where he got it from, or like does he have friends like that were kind of always conning people? And the other part of it is like when he is, that is such an impressionable thing to do to a kid. So did that build distrust in from your eyes, like the world, like don't trust the world, because there are people out there like that. Do you find it hard to trust people, or like how did that part of it?
Yeah, totally. Well, I'll do a dumb dad thing here because I know you gave me two questions. I'll forget this. I'll do one and then I'll forget the second question as I'm going through it. But as far as like what made him do it, he had this compulsion to lie. Like he's always loved to lie. So it's like you're not looking at somebody who like is picking it up from somewhere. Yeah, he learned his own tricks along the ways, but it's somebody who doesn't care about the consequences. And eventually, like all of us, we care. You tend to care about the consequences as you get older. But a true person who is going to be able to cut corners and not care is somebody who just doesn't care about the consequences. And you could do that a lot more successfully if you're not worried about what the fallout's going to be. So what made him do it is the love for it. Like you guys love doing what you're doing, you know, and it's like same. And I'm enjoying stand-up comedy and performing like you guys, and that was his passion. That's where he focused his energy. And I'm not kidding, I forgot that second question.
Like
what was that?
Like he's as you said, he sort of shows you that you can get away with stuff. You can, you know, there's and the possibility out there.
And I wouldn't have. Like, I lost trust in people. I completely do. I would doubt people. Like as soon as you meet people, I'm like, this person's full of. This person's, you know, like this person is just like not, you know, again, like I would say my dad's not my guy. I would say this person's not my guy. And like whether they were or maybe I'm wrong, but to me, it was always safer to say that this person's not a good person. This person's BSing. Now, listen, we all lie. We all BS, whether some people a lot smaller than others, because you're trying to hype yourself up. You know, you lie when you say, how are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm doing good. But meanwhile, you could have just like, you know, buried your dog, like I mean that's sad, but like, you know, like just something just so you're gonna keep it moving, like you just don't want to tell somebody that. So I don't know why I went to that, but I was just,
We all got to bury a dog someday.
Yeah. So you're like, I just buried a dog. You're like, me too. It's like, oh, all right, that's great. Everyone has that in common.
I don't even know whose dog it was. I was just.
It's so funny because people probably ask you all the time, did that must have had an effect on you right before you go on stage and do stand-up comedy?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody at stand-up, I feel like, I mean, you want to say everybody, but like, yeah, I would say most stand-up comics, they have something that happened, and it carries you, and it makes you able to get up there in front of people and not care about, you care about, obviously you want it to go well, but like, there's something about you where you're like, I don't care. Like, even if it goes bad, it's not the worst thing in the world. I've had worse things, and maybe that helps. It's like a little bit of armor.
And you also probably have to deal with like all your comic friends just giving you the hardest time about this podcast, just being like, he let you meet Michael Jordan. He can't be that
bad. Yeah. My buddy Sam Morrell yesterday, he's like, I'm gonna make a podcast called Number 2 Dad, and like I'm like, okay, like, he's just busting my balls. But yeah, like you're just like, it's just like but everybody, people are actually, comics are like so great, and Sam's awesome, and like telling people about it, and a lot of like all my friends, they've been in my corner about like the whole situation, because it's different than stand up. I'm telling a story. It's like we're so used to like comics releasing comedy specials, and it's awesome, but it kind of is a different creative thing that I've never done before, but it's a story that I've always wanted to tell, and I was waiting for the right time to tell it, and it felt right when I had a kid, because it's just like such a balance where here, being a dad is such a selfless thing, and I've said this before, but it's like you really you have to put yourself on the back burner for your kids, and like they have to take precedent, and that's what was kind of lost, and like what I was amazed with, like that my father just never took that stance. He just didn't want to. He didn't want to be second. He wanted to be first, and then if his kids could benefit, that's great, but the primary thing was, it always seemed like it was himself.
Yeah, you definitely spoke to that. Especially, I thought that one of the most interesting things you said early on in the podcast was how when you met, like, it's either Michael Jordan or it was the Rangers game, that your dad wasn't as stoked about it in the way, because he was just like, he was stoked about what he was doing. Yeah. It was like, it was like kleptomaniacs. They don't love what they steal. They love stealing. And that kind of aspect of it.
The rush. Yeah, they like the rush. And he would, he was more about like getting through than it was about meeting. Like, so is the smile on my face, was that like the real reason? And, that's a question that like, that sticks out. And that's something that I want to ask him, like, is that, what were you doing it really for? Like, 'cause from the outside, it seemed like it was just primarily like just you feeling good about pulling one over.
Yeah.
And we would go to these games, and like, going to a sporting event with your dad, especially as a son, or, just as your family, you guys are sitting together as a family. And my dad and I would go to these games, and we weren't sitting together. Never sitting together, because he was off taking photos like through the glass or on the court, and then I would find like a random seat that he would get for me, or I'd be up in the press area. So I'd be around the garden, walking around by myself from 9 to 14 years old, which is crazy when you think about it.
It is.
That's
So yeah, and I remember walking around Madison Square Garden during the Stanley Cup, and like I'm just doing all these things that you're like, in New York City, kids are walking around like but in groups, and like I'm just this lone kid, and you're very, very few kids are at the Game 7 of the 1994 Rangers Stanley Cup. It just is like it's an adult thing to go to. It's such a crazy ticket. But yeah, I was there and just strolling around, like I belong there.
That's incredible. It's a great podcast. I have one more question, and then we can move on to. Do you have a dumb dad moment?
Yeah, I got it. Okay. I have a few. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, good.
So I got one more question, and then we can move on to that. Will you play your father in the movie?
Yeah, that's. I would love to. Or if it's like based off of, if I was to say, if it was based off of me, now, it would be myself, and then we'd get somebody like, I don't know. I like Ben Stiller a lot, but I that's one person that comes to mind of like being my dad. But like, I mean, there's so many people. Like, yeah, but I'm open. If somebody wanted to make this, I'd be anything. I'd
be like one of the guards.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah. When I would tell people this story, they're always like, "Oh, this is such like a movie or a TV show," because there's so many different like levels to it. You got the sports cons, but you also got this like family that was growing up and just really pretending to be something that they weren't, while their dad is just conning. Like, we were living in this nice community, but like our dad, he had jobs, but he's ripping people off in the process, and you're just like waiting for the shoe to fall, so to speak, because you don't know when the next time he's going to be in court and this business is going to be shut down.
Wow. It's a great podcast. It really, the production or editing, I don't know the words for it, but it's akin to Serial. It's really good. Every episode ends with like, all right, where's the next one? So
Thank you.
I'll be looking forward to the fourth one. It's really, really great.
I appreciate it.
So let's move on to our Dumb Dad moments.
Yep.
This is the part of the podcast where we just talk about, for you, it can be an all-timer. It doesn't need to be of the week. But where you went really wrong as a parent. Evan, do you want to kick us off to start?
I traveled with my kids. This wasn't my fault, but when we bought tickets to fly here, it was like, certainly when we booked the flight, there was like, it was a smaller flight, and so we were like really trying to schedule, okay, this is great. It's 2 seats per side of the plane. So my wife and I are like, well, we can't really sit next to each other. Obviously, we have 2 kids. So we'll sit, my son and I will sit behind you guys. And then it gets, the plane gets upgraded, or whatever you want to call it, a bigger flight, so they're going to accommodate more people. So now it's 3 seats, and so my wife and I are still sitting. My wife and I got stuck in the middle seats because now they've added now the flight's bigger. So on the way here, my wife and I are sitting in the middle seat, and not necessarily a dumb parenting moment in the fact that like we could have controlled it, but then you find yourself stuck in the situation like very awkwardly, like, sorry, we have to go to the bathroom now, and it's like that awful feeling of like being responsible for this. Now I'm responsible for this person's comfort as well as my son's comfort.
Yeah.
It just wasn't like a great situation overall. And then I'm like kind of mismanaging, like, stop drinking so much water. Like, we can't go to the bathroom a bunch of times.
Taking kids to a bathroom on a flight. Have you done that, Gary? It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Oh yeah. Well, so my youngest one, so he's 1, but we flew to Savannah like as a family like a few months ago, and that was just like he had a meltdown on like both flights. We tried like everything, like where we left late, so we like hopefully he would sleep, and then he didn't sleep, and it was just like such a mess of like a screaming baby on like we had the screaming baby on the flight, and we had it twice, and he was just our 1-year-old he's a difficult one. Our older one was so much easier, and so you see this like he's a terrorist on the flight, and we were just like we were like I know
as long as you don't say that on the flight.
yeah exactly.
Sorry, buddy.
He was going, and then he like it was so bad, and we had my wife like would be holding him, and then she'd be like so frustrated, and then she'd give him to me, and I'm like I don't want, I just wanted to open up the emergency thing and throw him out, but I didn't.
You're on a Boeing, it would have happened anyway.
But surprisingly, like we were around like really nice people, like, and it's luckily Savannah from New York, it's like a 2-hour flight, so it's not the longest. But if you get into like that air, like the hours of like like 3 plus, people start getting really annoyed because they're looking to sleep, and I get it, and but thank God we had nice people, because and we were the ones more stressed out because you just don't want to be those people.
Yeah, you don't want to be that person. And it's funny, every time I've been around kids when I didn't have kids, they would give me like an extra bottle of booze when I'd order it. And then there was one time I think where my son was being, same thing. He's my second, and he was being a lot on a flight, but then we kind of got him a little calmed down. And then the flight attendant came by, and I ordered an alcoholic beverage, and she gave me 2. And I was like, that's nice, but I do have to take care of this kid.
Yeah.
Let's not booze it all up. But thank you. I will keep this.
Yeah.
But the
for
bathroom
later.
thing is tough with a 4-year-old. So like we'll
Man.
go in there and it's like you're just like don't touch anything, and you're like I'm like picking him up and like tilting him, and then like there's like turbulence and it's just like you're just shaking. You're trying everything that he's like so he doesn't like touch anything and make it dirty, and like you just feel
Gross.
you feel gross after being on like in a small
Yeah.
airplane bathroom. But yeah, and I'm a germaphobe too, so I'm like trying to like just
Oh,
especially
man.
like extra, yeah.
Yeah, I never had to change my daughter. I only changed one of my kids on a flight when they were in diapers. I had to I'm 6'3", and I had to go into one of those bathrooms during turbulence, change a diaper. So like they have little folding tables there that come down, and I had to do that. And I remember the only way I could do it efficiently was to like lock my legs and push my head up against the ceiling so that I was locked in place and just like hold the kid and just kind of wedge myself. It's not, I get it. Like a flight is just, it's a faster way to get somewhere. I don't want to blame them too much for it being as inefficient as it is.
No,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's plenty of opportunities to make a bunch of mistakes, which will happen.
Yeah. I'll give you my dumb dad moment. Mine was, so this week my kids have been on break. They've been on school break, and my wife and I are both in the content creation business. That's what we're doing right now. So we're kind of spending this time while my wife's going to start a job back up in production soon. She's kind of giving me this time to, to kind of get more, like you said, to give me time to go into this room and waste that time that I was supposed to be writing and
Perfect.
come out. And she's like, "How productive?" I was like, "Dude, I was so productive. I watched I watched like 8 clips from a TV show on TikTok that I'll never
But it's
watch."
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's work. It's all I'm taking it all in. But it's funny. It's been a weird cycle because I started all of this being a stay-at-home dad. So I was going to all of the story times at the library. I was going to all the kids gymnastic, those little ours are called My Gym, and they have like all the kid gymboree kind of places. Going to all the doctor's appointments, going to everything. And now I'm kind of like taking the back seat of my wife's like currently playing with the kids right now while we're doing this. And it's definitely like a weird shift. You feel a lot of guilt. I think I come out kind of like what you were saying before about going upstairs 2 hours before lunch, just kind of like taking your lunch break. I'll come out and she's like, "What's up?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just felt bad being in there for a while." And she's like, "Go back, go back to work." So it's definitely been this like guilt thing. And then this past weekend we went to my parents, and they live in the Palm Springs area, the desert, and they got a pool because you have to. Because it gets to 120 degrees there.
Yeah.
They have it's an outdoor bath. That's basically what it is.
So my daughter, we were at my parents. We're swimming, and she wants to race me. And here's the thing: 6'3", but no athletic prowess at all.
Yeah.
She not also somebody who didn't follow in their dad's footsteps. And but yet at the same time, I still have that like arrogant. Yeah, why not? I could do that kind of dumb dad attitude about things. And my daughter wanted to race me in the pool. She had flippers on. And it was one of those things that I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, let's race." And like the first time we race, it's pretty close. And then we did like a best of 5. And I was being such a tryhard. And I just remember like we were changing like the strokes up because she's taking swim class. So then they're like, "All right, do the butterfly," which like me doing the butterfly is probably similar to like a person drowning. So I'm doing this and like racing. Now I'm trying to win. Now I'm like, I can't let my kids beat me. Like I'm being that guy.
Yeah.
And we're wearing goggles, and I'm going for it, and I barely beat her
how
out.
How old are your kids?
She's 8, and my son is 5.
Okay.
I could still mop the floor with him, dude. He doesn't stand a chance.
You need this. I
just kind of push him under, and then I go. But my daughter, it's getting close with flippers, and see, I even have to say with flippers. I can't even I'm the worst. And
You can't admit it.
this is like what a loser. And it was funny. We did the butterfly stroke, and I remember I came up, and the whole pool. because again, I didn't take swim. The whole pool is doing this.
Right,
And
right.
like my whole family is watching, my parents, my wife, and they're all just like, Kev, relax.
Yeah.
And then I had to just be, and then I was like, she has flippers on. And they were like,
Yeah.
you have flippers. You're 6'3".
Right,
And
right.
I was like, they don't move the same. And it's just funny. It was just sad. It was just sad the things you hold on to things you never even had in the first place as a dad.
Yeah, you bought yourself a trophy after. Just anything to feel good.
It's like, did anybody film it? I want to edit that.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I'll play my oldest and like stuff, and even the youngest. But it's like just like whatever the little like Tykes hoop, basketball hoop, and like you're just shooting it, and like every once in a while like he just goes in and like I just just reject it. Like there's no reason for it other than like my own like thing to make myself feel good. That I could just like just swat it. Yeah, exactly. That's my everybody has a pool. So so we all whatever however you want to call it. So we're all doing something where you're just like, oh, like I'll race my kid and like I'll let him win this one and then I'll just beat him the next two so I take the 2 out of 3. So it's like whatever I could do to let him know that I still got him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had like a dumb dad moment. It's like it happened, really just yesterday where, you get to ask these questions and like now my 4-year-old, he's just more intuitive to like things and like how something works. And I don't know how anything works. So he just yesterday asked like how when the sun goes down, like where, does it go? And like, and I'm like, my wife was there too. And then she started saying something and I'm like, you don't know, you're dumb, like you're as dumb as me, like we don't know. And this is why he doesn't understand colors, like but because we don't know, like you're better just saying, I'm just better off saying like I don't know this, like I don't know any, like I don't know that stuff. So I'm like I just don't know these things, like so I'm like maybe if you like it that much, just like read about it somewhere. Like I don't know what to say because it's like listen, where does that sun go? It goes down. And then it comes back up. I mean,
it goes
there's
to sleep.
nobody like. I know there's like more words that could be used to like describe that, but there is nothing like it goes down, guys, and then it's back up. I mean, there's. I don't. Know,
I think there's just as much. As silly as it may seem, it's just as much power in knowledge in teaching your children that it's okay to say you don't know something. Like rather than make it up. Because the older he gets. As you did, you'll like sniff out the bullshit. If you're trying to make something up on the spot, he's gonna be like, "You don't know what you're talking about, do you?"
Yeah. Then he did. And then right after that, he did the. He goes and then like with the phone, he goes, "How are we able to talk to somebody that's not here?" And I'm like, just shut the up. Just stop.
You say, how about this? You tell me what color the sun is, and I'll tell you where it goes.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's just the questions where you're like, if anything, I felt fine about myself leading up to that point where he started, when he starts asking questions about how something works, and you're like, I don't know. There's things I should sort of know. Like even the phone is really, it's crazy. It's like there's nothing to like, how are we even talking to each other? Doesn't even make sense.
No.
None of it makes sense.
None of it.
It doesn't, there's a camera. What does that even mean that shows you where you are?
It's the stuff you have to explain to little kids is so funny because sometimes it is like the most simple question. Like something like, how does a phone work? It's like, I don't know. I don't even know how it was thought of in the first place. Let's talk about that.
I don't know how it works, but I get pissed when it's not working well.
Yeah.
Which is so unfair.
It made more sense when a phone had like wires and you were like, all right, the wire from this goes through here and then the voice travels through that.
My voice spins.
And then they got rid of the wires, you guys. They went wireless. And so the wires did the wires even do anything to begin with? Who knows? But
that's when the cell phones came out. That's when we realized, I don't know how a walkie-talkie works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. They just redid the walkie-talkie.
They just redid the walkie-talkie. They just made a better walkie-talkie. But
Yeah.
Gary, thanks for coming on. Again, the podcast is called Number One Dad. You have this YouTube special out. It could be worse. Can't recommend enough. Everybody check all those things out. The podcast is wherever you can find podcasts, and the special is up on YouTube.
Yeah, distributed by iHeartMedia, Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Podcast Network, and there are new episodes every Monday, yeah?
Yeah, so new episodes every Monday. It's in the true crime category. It's funny. It's heartwarming.
It's great.
It's about reconciliation with my con man father, who I haven't spoken to in 24 years.
Incredible.
Love it.
Well,
And,
Can't wait
thank
to
you
keep
for
listening.
I think it's on behalf of people that listen to you and listen to your story, like, thank you for sharing the story.
I looked at it as like kind of like therapeutic. I mean, like we talked about, I see a therapist in it, but like therapeutic that I could like finally get it out and say, and like you kind of want to tell your story a little bit and not just let it like fall to the wayside. So I was hoping that people would enjoy it, and fortunately, people are definitely taking to it.
Yeah.
I hope everybody listens to it. And thanks for coming on. Is there anything else that you want to plug?
Stand-up shows. I'm always doing stand-up. You could go to GaryVider.com. That's GaryVider.com. And I got a whole bunch of shows this summer. And it's always a good time.
Awesome, man.
Awesome. Well,
Best of luck to you, and especially with a 4 and a 1-year-old.
Yeah, you guys do, man. I appreciate it. I feel like your dumbness has helped me.
Thanks so much.
Thanks again, man.
All right,
Appreciate
take
it.
care. Welcome to the world, little one. Welcome to life.
How do I stop this?
The Dumb Dad Podcast is proudly presented by Bet Online.